Ladies and gentlemen, g'day, welcome back to the channel. My name is Economics Mate, and this is World of Tanks Blitz. And in today's video, as the title suggests, we're going to be talking about tanks that have been forgotten in World of Tanks Blitz. Tanks that used to have actual meaning. Tanks that people used to play all the time, and nowadays you very rarely see them on the battlefield. And, well, either for good reason or not so good of a reason. Maybe they've just never been sold as much. Perhaps Wargaming don't market them as much as they used to. Or perhaps they're just not as good as they used to be. Regardless, I'm not going to be including tanks after 5.5 because there's just no point. All the lower tier tanks from tier 4 all the way to tier 1, they don't really count because, yes, a lot of people these days won't know what these tanks are because they've never seen them before. And most people don't really care about low tiers anyway. So let's just put that out the door right now. We're not going to be focusing on lower tiers. Instead, we're going to be focusing on tiers 5 and above. So without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, let us start off with number 5, which is, of course, this. This is the Dickermax. The Dickermax is a tier 6 German tank destroyer. It was once a premium tank that was then changed into a collector tank. It is honestly a super underrated tank destroyer. It's basically what happens if you took a Störer Emil and made it into a tier 6 tank, just not giving it its whopping 128mm gun. Instead, this thing rocks a 105mm gun with an amazing amount of penetration, great amount of DPM, and an ungodly amount of gun depression. The only thing with this tank is that it doesn't have any armor, so don't expect it to bounce any shots whatsoever, and expect to be HE'd quite more often than not. And of course, you can't run Sporeliner on this because, well, it's not offered on it. Now, for those of you who remember the days of Skate Extreme, you'll know more often than not that this tank was one of his favorite tank destroyers at tier 6, and for good reason. Look at the statistics on this thing. Its gun is a tier 8 gun. It's essentially a similar gun to what the the Tiger II has as his top gun. It's pretty crazy. You're rocking an 8.6 second reload at 2100 DPM average damage, obviously. Obviously, your Panzer IV and your Krios, they're going to do over 3000 damage per minute. But this isn't about damage per minute. It's about dishing out the damage and obviously getting some impossible shots off. It's got a 3-second aim time, but a 269 dispersion, which is absolutely amazing. It's got 180 mils of pen as standard and 250 on your ABCR, which again, this is tier 6 we're talking about. The tanks you're coming up against are tier 5, tier 6, and tier 7, meaning your gun has more pen than pretty much any other heavy tank at tier 7 has on its standard and premium rounds. It's pretty crazy when you think about it. It has 310 alpha, 260 on your APCR, and 380 on your HE. By the way, you get 53 mils on your high explosive. If you're running this with carbureted shells, forget about it. And there you go, 15 degrees of gun depression. This is honestly one of the ridgeline kings when it comes to fighting on a ridgeline. It really is absolutely amazing. Now, I'm not going to sit here and bore you with some gameplay. I'm just going to run you through the stats really quickly and what I think about the tank. Now, obviously, it's got a very stupid name. It's called the Dickermax. Now, it still is funny to me, even after all these years, as it was funny to skate more than 7 years ago. 7 to 8 years ago. It's pretty crazy now how long that video was and how long ago that video was recorded. But even he thought this tank was just funny. Look, this is a forgotten tank destroyer. It's sad that it's been forgotten because it used to be a tech tree tank destroyer that you could purchase from the tech tree. Now, if you look at the tech trees, you can't see it. You can only see the Panzer IV and the T25. How unfortunate is that? So that's my number 5, the Dickermax. Coming in at number 4, it's the KV220T. This is, I believe, was an EU exclusive tank. I think NA got some of these tanks. I'm not 100% sure. If I remember correctly, as the narrative goes, EU got majority of these tanks, and I think NA got some of them, and Asia got none of these tanks. As far as I know, Asia got none of these tanks. This is basically a KV-3 at T5, just with a stock KV-1 turret and stock KV-1 gun. It's got the whole of a KV-3, which means it has the armor of a KV-3, but it has the turret of a KV-1, a stock turret that is, and the stock gun of a KV-1. So you're getting the best of a KV-3, but the worst of a KV-1. And that spawns the KV-220. Can you imagine if this thing had the top turret and the top gun of a KV-1 on the chassis of a KV-3? This thing will be broken. In fact, when it first came out, it was broken. People struggled to penetrate this thing. It was insane. The level of, not accuracy, but the level of armor this thing had at T5, even coming up against T6s, they struggled to pen this thing because it had T7 armor. It was insane. You could just side scrape this thing all day long and people will just struggle to bounce you. So that's why people just started shooting you in your turret, because that's literally the only place that they were able to pen. So the hull has 104 millimeters of armor. The sides have 104 millimeters of armor, and the rear has 83 mils of armor, which means, ladies and gentlemen, that you're going to struggle to pen this thing all day long if you're at T5 and even T6. It was pretty insane how much armor this thing had compared to the KV-1. Now look at the KV-1. The KV-1 has 61 mils on the front of the hull. 61! And the KV-3, the KV-220T, 104. And 104 on the sides, which means it was basically impervious to anyone at T5 and T6. It was insane. And people just forgot about this tank. Wargaming haven't sold this thing in such a long time. As I said, I believe it was just an exclusive sort of thing that popped up. So you're never going to see these things being played on the battlefield, like, ever. So, yeah, it is what it is. But that is my number 4. Alrighty, coming in at number 3, it's the Panzer IV Hydra. I believe that's what they call the Hydra stat, or whatever it's called. Yeah, the Hydra stat. There we go. This thing is a very weird tank. This was a medium tank that was introduced into Blitz a very long time ago. It started its life as a premium, and then Wargaming decided to change it into a collector tank after 5.5. Pretty crazy when you think about it. This thing is basically a Panzer IV with a weird looking sort of hull. It's so weird. It's like it's angled in a way, but it's not. And basically what it meant was it was for use of easy access for troops to get in and out of from the rear. As far as I know, that could potentially be what it was for. Otherwise, I'm pretty sure the actual the purpose of having that sort of rear is so it's easy to work on in terms of mechanics. So like mechanically it was easy to work on, you know, opening up the engine deck and whatnot and working on the engine, you know, through there. It was probably much easier to do than having to stand on top of the tank to do the work. So yeah, that's probably why they did it. But here it is, the Panzer IV Hydra stat. Now, there's many different Panzer IV variants that you can find at T5. There's the Panzer IV-G, there's the 5.4, there's the 3.4, there's the Panzer IV Gargoyle, which basically mounts the 105mm that you could have mounted on the Panzer IV, which I'm pretty sure you can't do anymore. Yeah, you can't do it anymore. Yeah, I forgot about that, actually. And that's why the Panzer IV Gargoyle is a thing, because this is the one that you can actually equip a 105mm to, because it comes with it. My point is, there's a bunch of Panzer IV variants. And this one is just the weirdest and the rarest of the bunch. Wargaming have not sold this thing in such a long time. And no one plays it. This is literally a forgotten Panzer IV. Everyone, even people know about this thing, the Panzer III-4, and that's because it was a tech tree tank before 5.5. I actually own this thing on my account because it was a tech tree tank. But this thing is not a tech tree tank. It was a premium tank that was sold in very little numbers, well, not in little numbers, but it was very, very rarely sold, and therefore you never see this thing again. So that's my number 3 pick. And you're probably wondering, Is Eco going to be doing anything above tier 5 and tier 6? Just you wait. Coming in at number 2, it is the KV-13. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the KV-13, in my opinion, is one of the most forgotten tanks in Blitz. In fact, even when it was a tech tree tank, it was forgotten. People sort of just skipped over this tank, or didn't even bother grinding this tank, because it wasn't the best tank to begin with. It's just super rare to see, and if you didn't play back before 5.5, you would never have gotten this tank. Like, there would be no opportunity for you to get it unless Wargaming do a giveaway or one of the CCs does a giveaway. That's the only chance you'll get to have a KV-13 in your garage. And as a result, this is one of the rarest tanks in the game because people just don't play us. And you never see these on the battlefield. It's just forgotten. It's literally a forgotten tank, which is unfortunate. It's a T7 medium tank. It's a T7 Soviet medium tank. It was never a collector tank to begin with. It was a tech tree tank. It was removed from the tech tree because Wargaming seemed to think that, yeah, this tank was irrelevant and didn't need to be in the game. And that's the story of the KV-13, which is unfortunate because it's actually not bad of a tank. If we have a look at the statistics, which I should have done on the Panzer IV Gargoyle, Panzer Hydra stat, but regardless, it's a Panzer IV, nothing special. It's got 120 mils on the front of the armor. The whole armor on this thing is pretty good. It's basically a heavy tank in medium tank form. Turret is not bad, 95 on the front, 86 on the rear, 85 on the side of the hull. The gun itself is an 85mm gun. It's basically the same as the, what do you call it? It's basically the same as what you get on the T-34-85. 2300 DPM, 5.08 second aim. So basically a 5-second reload, to be fair. 4.5 second aim time and 0.35 dispersion is horrible. It's not the best for a medium tank. Pen is abysmal again, 144 mils and 194 mils on the APCR. Not that good whatsoever. And you're doing 200 alpha, which, you know, is not amazing, but for a T7 medium, it's not bad. And you get 5 degrees of gun depression. Oh, that's gotta hurt. So it was never an amazing tank to begin with, but it's just super rare. And again, the only opportunity you had to get this thing was either you had to play before 5.5 and grind it, research it and purchase it, or you had to win this in a CC giveaway of some sort. So yeah, that is my number 2 pick. I wonder what my number 1 pick is going to be. I'm going to have some honorable mentions before we get to the number 1 pick. So stay tuned. An honorable mention is the Lupus. The Lupus is a T7 heavy tank that came out years ago. And this thing had 12 degrees of gun depression. It had a crazy armor profile, and it had a 120mm gun. And it was considered to be broken at T7, which was pretty insane. This was before there was Smashers and before there was Annihilators. But this was at a time when Helsing and Draculas were around. So this was a pretty crazy tank to begin with. Again, this is a forgotten tank. It just is. Nameless, another one that is technically a forgotten tank. People don't play. I very rarely see people playing this thing, which is a shame. That and the endurance, or not the endurance, whatever it's called. You know which one I'm talking about. The Edelweiss. That's it. The Nameless and the Edelweiss. These are tanks that you just don't see people playing anymore. It's a shame because they're not bad tanks. They're pretty good. Again, forgotten tanks. They are literally forgotten. I bet you people have these things in their garages and they're just sitting around collecting dust and no one plays them. Wargaming as well haven't really sold them in a while, which is a shame. But yeah, those are 2 honorable mentions straight off the bat. Here's another one. M4A1 Revelorice. This is also a tank that no one plays. Literally, I haven't seen a Revelorice in battle for a very long time. It's literally a forgotten tank. No one plays this thing anymore, which is a shame because it's actually not bad. It's got a very, very nice gun. The armor profile is piss poor. Like it's basically a Sherman at tier 8 with an amazing tier 8 gun. That's it. That's all it's got going for it. The gun is amazing. Everything else about it is horrendous for a tier 8 tank, which is probably why people don't play it. But again, it's a forgotten tank. People don't play this thing. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, we come to one of the most forgotten tanks in the game, if not the most forgotten tank in the game. In my opinion, I don't see this tank, like, at all being played. Apart from myself, I don't see this tank getting played whatsoever. And it's this thing, the T2020. When 2020 came around, it was such a memorable year for all the wrong reasons. Wargaming decided to honor it by bringing out the T2020. It had a very cool mechanism where whenever you shoot, the shell would actually be ejected from the top of the tank there, right? So it had a cool mechanism that was pretty cool. It was actually a good tank. It wasn't bad for a Soviet tank at all. It was actually very, very fun to play, and it's still quite good to play. But again, they only sold it in 2020, and as far as I know, they only brought it back a few times after that. And you never see this thing being played. And you very rarely see this thing being sold in the store. And mainly because it's not a popular tank. People don't play this thing. If they have it, they're not going to play it. To be fair, when it first came out, yes, you could just buy it outright, but it was like $60. It's crazy. It was a lot of money back then. And that's probably why people didn't buy it. I didn't buy the tank. I've got it on my account. I never bought the tank. It was gifted to me by my good friend Tyler Schofield, who is no longer plays the game, but he was also a YouTuber back in the day. I won it in a giveaway, and he gifted it to me, which is awesome. And I still have it to this day. And I still, every now and then take it out to play. But again, this is the tank no one talks about. No one features. No one reviews. You never see it in battle anymore. It just sits in our garages collecting dust, as far as I know. And not many people play it. And that's why I think this is number one. But, I mean, you have a look at the stats real quick, okay? It's got 140 mils on the front of the hull, 100 on the sides, 50 on the rear. I mean, you can get HE to death on your rear if you wanted to. Your turret is nice and strong, 155 mils. Not amazing, but it does have those, those extra bit of armor, the plating. So, they're good for heat sort of absorption. It's a 122 millimeter gun, 1700 DPM. Not amazing by any stretch of the imagination. Pen is basically just your average 120 millimeter at tier 8 penetration, and 6 degrees of gunner pressure. Overall, as I said, as a package, it's pretty nice, but no one plays it. But I think there is one more tank that could probably dethrone this one. And I think it's a tank people kind of remember, but you never see in the battle ever because of how absolutely trash it is. Are you ready? Here we go. We are talking, of course, about the Panzer Self-Propelled Gun 4, or as I like to call it, and everyone else likes to call it, the Death Toaster. This thing was a T5 tech tree German tank destroyer that had literally no armor whatsoever. Are you ready to see the armor profile on this thing? It's got 20 mils on the front, 15 on the sides, and 15 on the rear. That's, of course, talking about the actual chassis, but the box that it is encased in has no armor whatsoever, meaning you can be HE'd by light tanks and by medium tanks at T4. T4 tanks can HE this tank to death. Not only does it have no armor whatsoever, it also has legitimately no gun arc at all. This was one of the worst tanks, and probably still is one of the worst tanks in the game. The only thing this thing has, is the gun is absolutely amazing. It is one of the best guns tier for tier in the game, period. There is no question about it. But it is literally a glass cannon. The only thing this tank can do well is its gun. That's it. That's the only redeeming feature of this tank is the gun. Everything else about it is absolutely trash. And that is the reason why people don't play this thing. I want you to just have a second to look at the gun. Okay, this is a flak gun. So historically speaking, this is a flak 88, a long-barreled flak 88. So this is an anti-aircraft gun. Okay? Look at the DPM, 1721 DPM at T5, which was pretty crazy at the time, right? Accuracy, 3.9 second aim time, not the best, but it does have 0.307 dispersion, which is pretty good. Okay, the pen, look at the pen. 194 mils on your AEP, 237 on your APCR, 44 on your HE. You can probably HE many tanks at T5 and T4. It's pretty crazy. Yeah, your gun depression, 5 degrees of gun depression, but you had no gun arc whatsoever. You couldn't traverse your gun left and right by any stretch of the imagination. It was virtually impossible. It was impossible, which was crazy. And this is why, ladies and gentlemen, I think is truly the most forgotten tank in the game. This thing. Yes, when we say Death Toaster, most people these days will have no idea what you're on about. And it's true. We won't. A lot of newer players, they will have no idea what the Death Toaster is because they would have never seen it in the game at all. And that's why, in my opinion, yes, the T2020 is very rarely played and is quite forgotten and one of the most forgotten tanks in the game. But I think the true #1 tank in the game that is completely and utterly forgotten and should remain forgotten is this absolute train wreck of a vehicle. Wargaming. What were you thinking? Historically speaking, this was a real thing. But this was not a tank destroyer. It was an anti-aircraft gun mounted on a Panzer IV chassis, and that was it. It was just to move the gun around. That was all it was for. That was it. You can't classify this as a tank destroyer. Oh my god, wargaming. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this quite fun video reminiscing of tanks of the past and my opinions on what I think are the most forgotten tanks. Now, I could have gone and looked at the statistics of each and every one of these tanks and told you, oh, this is how many people are playing it, blah, blah, blah. But, I mean, I'm talking from a general perspective. From a general perspective and a general observant perspective. And from what I can see, you very rarely see these tanks, if ever, on the battlefield. And that's why this is my top 5. Well, I mean, technically it's a top 6 now, isn't it? Oh god, top 6 and honorable mentions, most forgotten tanks in World of Tanks Blitz. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Ladies and gentlemen, don't forget to let me know in the comments down below whether you agree with me or whether you disagree with me. And tell me what you would put as your most forgotten tanks in Blitz. Look after yourselves, ladies and gentlemen. Look after your friends and family. Peace in the Middle East. And as always, I'll catch you in the next one, and I'll catch you on the battlefield. So stay safe on there, all right? Laters. And yeah, good luck. Good luck out there, boys and girls, and everyone else in between. Cheers.